Paul Daley. One punch, one moment, one career, destroyed forever. After the fight was over, what made Paul Daley's expulsion one of the fastest decisions in UFC history? Let's unpack it. Daley entered UFC 113, full of hype, power, and knockout potential. He faced Josh Koscheck, who frustrated him throughout the match with constant takedowns and relentless trash talk. The tension inside Daley kept building like a pressure cooker. He was visibly angrier every round. Then, at the final horn, when the fight was officially done, Daley walked over and threw a cheap shot straight into Koscheck's face. The punch wasn't part of the fight anymore. It was pure rage. Koscheck went down, and the arena gasped. When Dana White faced the media afterward, he wasted no time. "He's done. I don't care if he's the best fighter in the world. You don't do that." Daley's apology came too late. He admitted later, "It was frustration. I made a stupid decision." Daley was the first of many, but the next fighter had a habit so dangerous, it physically endangered his opponents. And that's exactly what I'll tell you in just a second. Rousimar Palhares. His submissions were terrifying, but Rousimar Palhares wasn't expelled for winning. He was expelled for refusing to stop. Nicknamed Toquinho, Palhares was famous for his brutal leg locks, especially heel hooks that twisted knees into unnatural angles. His technique was flawless, but his timing was reckless. Even after opponents tapped out, Palhares often held the submission too long, risking permanent damage. The final straw came at UFC Fight Night 29 against Mike Pierce. Palhares grabbed Pierce's leg, locked the heel hook, and cranked it viciously. Pierce screamed and tapped, but Palhares delayed releasing for several dangerous seconds. Dana White had seen enough. After repeated warnings and earlier incidents, the UFC cut him. "You don't do that to your opponents. This is a sport, not a street fight," the UFC declared. Palhares defended himself by saying, "I never meant to hurt anyone. Sometimes I don't feel them tap." But many fighters didn't believe him. They called him reckless, dangerous, even predatory. However, legal trouble can sometimes take things to an even darker place, and the next name proves that brutally well. If you stick with me, I will reveal one of the most chaotic UFC exits ever. Jason "Mayhem" Miller. He had the charisma, he had the talent, but Jason "Mayhem" Miller's worst opponent was always himself. What began as fun slowly spiraled into one of MMA's most bizarre personal collapses. Mayhem Miller was a fan favorite. His entrances were wild, his energy was magnetic, and his coaching stint on The Ultimate Fighter made him a recognizable face, even to casual fans. The UFC initially saw star potential in him, but behind the showmanship, his personal life was falling apart. After losing back-to-back fights in the UFC, Miller's behavior outside the octagon became impossible to ignore. Arrests began piling up. Domestic violence accusations, bar fights, and erratic public appearances turned him into a constant legal headline. In one infamous 2012 incident, police found Miller naked inside a church, sitting on a couch covered in fire extinguisher foam. The story made national headlines and highlighted just how unstable things had become. Dana White finally drew the line. "It's not even about fighting anymore. He needs help," Dana said after Miller's release. Even after being cut, the downward spiral continued. Standoffs with SWAT teams, social media meltdowns, and more than a dozen arrests followed. By 2020, Miller had accumulated over 14 separate charges ranging from felony assault to vandalism. But while Miller battled himself, the next fighter's expulsion came after he unleashed pure violence outside of any sanctioned fight. Say, and that terrifying story is coming up next. War Machine. His nickname was War Machine, but his real battle ended in a courtroom. The crimes that led to his expulsion were some of the darkest in UFC history. Jonathan Koppenhaver, known professionally as War Machine, started his UFC career with promise. He won Knockout of the Night honors and had a personality that drew attention. However, his erratic behavior soon overshadowed his skills. Legal troubles started small: bar fights, arrests, and disturbing social media rants. But everything changed in 2014. War Machine brutally attacked his ex-girlfriend, adult film star Christy Mack, after discovering her with another man. The assault was horrifying. Mack suffered 18 broken bones, a ruptured liver, fractured ribs, and severe facial injuries. She later said in court, "I truly believed I was going to die." The UFC had already released War Machine before the attack due to previous behavioral issues, but after this violent incident, his name became permanently toxic in the MMA world. In 2017, he was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole until he serves at least 36 years. The judge told him, "You're a danger to society." Today, War Machine's name is almost erased from UFC history. Stick with me, because the next fighter ran away before the test even started. Thiago Silva. He was once a feared light heavyweight contender, but Thiago Silva's career was destroyed in a single terrifying night. This wasn't about fighting, it was about threats, guns, and a SWAT team. In 2014, Silva's personal life exploded. He suspected his ex-wife of cheating on him with her jiu-jitsu instructor, but instead of walking away, Silva showed up at the gym armed, threatened the couple, and created a full-blown hostage situation. It quickly turned into a tense standoff with Florida police. SWAT surrounded his home, leading to Silva's surrender after hours of negotiation. The UFC immediately suspended him, but the legal drama was far from over. Charges included aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, resisting arrest, and more. Though some charges were later dropped due to lack of evidence, the UFC refused to touch him again. Dana White made his stance clear. "We don't bring that type of behavior into the UFC." Silva attempted brief comebacks in smaller promotions, but the shadow of the gun incident followed him everywhere. Sponsors abandoned him. Media coverage painted him as a dangerous liability. The tragic part? Silva was still competitive as a fighter when it happened. His skills never got him expelled. It was one catastrophic personal choice that ended everything. But while Thiago's story involved loaded weapons, the next fighter made headlines by running. Not from his opponent, but from a drug test. And you'll see exactly why that was career-ending in just a second. Wanderlei Silva. He was called the Axe Murderer for his violent fighting style, but his real career killer was a failed drug test. That never even happened. Wanderlei Silva's fall wasn't from losing fights. It came from literally fleeing a test. In 2014, Silva was scheduled for a highly anticipated fight against Chael Sonnen. The hype was huge. But when the Nevada State Athletic Commission arrived for a random drug test, Silva refused to comply. In fact, he ran out of the gym and disappeared entirely. That single act led to an indefinite ban. Nevada's commission ruled that avoiding the test was equivalent to failing it. The UFC, under growing public pressure, terminated his contract shortly after. In later interviews, Silva admitted, "I used diuretics to control my weight because I was injured, but I did not use steroids." His fans were torn. Some defended him, arguing the punishment was too severe. Others saw it as a major violation of trust and sportsmanship. What makes Wanderlei's case so fascinating is that he was still one of the UFC's biggest stars when it happened. He had dozens of wars under his belt, most notably his brutal battles in Pride FC and the UFC middleweight division. However, the next fighter's expulsion wasn't about drugs, or weapons, or fights. It involved something far more disturbing that permanently erased his name from MMA conversations. If you stay with me, I'll reveal one of the darkest scandals the fight world has ever faced, coming up next. Travis Fulton. He fought more MMA bouts than almost anyone in history, over 300 fights. But Travis Fulton's horrifying secret life eventually ended his entire legacy in complete disgrace. Known as the Iron Man, Fulton was a veteran of nearly every major and minor fight promotion, including a brief stint in the UFC. For years, fans admired his toughness and insane fight schedule. However, what nobody knew was that outside the cage, Fulton was hiding something deeply sinister. In 2021, federal agents arrested him on shocking charges: possession of child images and sexual exploitation. The charges stunned the entire MMA community. Fighters, coaches, and fans couldn't believe that the man who once fought every weekend was living such a double life. As one former opponent said, "We shared a cage once. I never imagined he was capable of this." Cain Velasquez. He was a two-time heavyweight champion, loved by fans, respected by fighters. But one night, Cain Velasquez made a decision that shocked the world and ended his UFC career instantly. In 2022, Velasquez discovered that a man allegedly attacked his young family member. Enraged, Cain decided not to wait for the justice system. He chased the man's vehicle through the streets of California and opened fire with a handgun during the pursuit. The bullets struck the wrong person, hitting the alleged attacker's stepfather instead. Velasquez was arrested and charged with attempted murder, assault, and multiple gun violations. The MMA community was torn. Many, including Dana White, expressed sympathy for his motivation, but couldn't ignore the law he had broken. Dana White privately wrote to the court, "If the facts are true, who could blame him?" Velasquez spent 8 months in jail before being released on bail. His legal battle is ongoing. But regardless of any future outcome, his UFC career essentially ended the moment he pulled that trigger. The fight world hides stories far crazier than what happens inside the cage. Subscribe now for more shocking UFC scandals, banned fighters, and untold fight world secrets. New videos drop soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss them.